I would like to reconvene our first regularly scheduled meeting, November 6th. And we do know that the meeting has been officially warned. I would accept a motion on the minutes from Tuesday, October 16th.
Move to approve the minutes from Tuesday, October 16th as presented.
Any additions, corrections, deletions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Abstentions?
Yep.
And Dora's not here, so that would be 2. 3, 0, 1. And I would accept a motion on the special meeting that we had on October 17th.
Move to approve the minutes from October 17th,
Okay.
2012 as presented.
And any additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
Abstentions?
Yep.
2, 3, 0, 2. Okay. Chair's remarks, a few this evening. It is November 6th, Election Day. If you haven't voted yet, you still have about 43 minutes to go to get there and vote. I have been up at the polls twice today, once to vote and once to see how the turnout was going. I can't give you a number, but Annette Cappy said it was extremely high. I would love to see the number of people that are turning out today also turn out in our local election in March. I think it is abysmal when we have 13 or 14% when we're electing your legislative body locally, and we're going to have over probably 60 to 70% for this election, so we should make an effort to elect your local officials. But nonetheless, thank you for coming out. I'd like to pass along condolences to Larry Block's family. Larry Block was, some would call him an activist. He was very active in the community. He was one of the vice chairs for the Charter Revision Committee, and I know my conversations with Larry at numerous times were always spirited and fun to have, and so he will be missed, and thank him for his contributions to our community. 2 weeks ago, we had town meeting, a special town meeting, where, unless you've been out of the country, you know that we approved, town meeting members approved the police fire facility by an overwhelming number. It is a project that, although I don't think anybody on the board is excited about spending the amount of money that we're spending, a project that definitely needed to get done, and I appreciated all the support from town meeting members. On a personal side, I was disappointed with the 1% sales tax was defeated to help offset the tax impact on this project on taxpayers in Brattleboro. We were spared, lastly but not leastly, we were spared the wrath of Hurricane Sandy here locally. We did have some power outages. There are, Adabasi is, I think I read something in the paper today, they are collecting materials and goods, and probably, I'm not sure about money. If you're interested in making a contribution, you should call them. I think they're going to be making a trip down there this weekend. We appreciate that. I know that we received support from outside people in our hour of need with Irene, so anyone wishing to do that, and I appreciate her doing that. And that's all I have, Barb. Do you have anything?
I have nothing.
Okay. Select Board Committee reports? Dora.
Well, just to add to what you were just saying, Dick, it's going to be part of the Flat Street Rising. It's sort of a continuation, Flat Street Rising to the occasion, and beginning to collect items to help folks who were affected by Hurricane Sandy. And we will be posting things, requests, and sending things down on a regular basis. This is going to be an ongoing thing, so if anybody wants more information, they can call Alyssa over at Ottavasi or speak to me. Just to add to Larry, condolences to Larry Block. Larry is someone who was an activist in the community. I knew him as an activist. And he was responsible for starting a number of community organizations, at least participating in the starting of Brat Power, Vermonters Restoring Democracy. He was very much involved in Post Oil Solutions, the starting of that organization, and he gave a lot of time and a lot of money to a lot of people. The activist attic that he had upstairs above Save the Corporations had a copy machine that was donated by someone, and he supplied the paper, and anybody who had a cause that they wanted to get information out for could go into Save the Corporations and make copies to send out, to put out flyers. And so he definitely had an impact on this community, and he will be sadly missed.
Anyone else? Yes,
Yeah.
Chris.
I attended a meeting of the Vermont Transportation Board, which is statutorily required to seek comment in 7 areas around the state. And it was very interesting to hear what local people had to say there, but it was, as we come upon budget season, a little alarming to learn that the state anticipates that its $650 million transportation budget is likely to fall to about $450 million. I know a good $250 million funding gap with regard to the state's usual needs for roads and bridges and maintenance and that sort of thing. And the board was asking for ideas on how to cope. It was something to really raise your eyebrows, and there were a lot of suggestions made that with regard to using what money there is a little more efficiently, to do things a little differently. And one idea that came up was a gasoline tax. And it seems to me that if there were to be such a thing, that perhaps a local gasoline tax might be a way out of the woods on some of our budget issues. But this was something where we were amply warned that there would be enormous controversy over such a thing. But I did think it was really worth mentioning, even though this was not a select board committee that I attended, that to talk about it now, to identify it in public as widely in public as a very serious budget development on the part of the state that will very likely have a long-term impact on what we in Brattleboro do for our roads and maintenance of them.
Thank you.
Traffic Safety Committee met 2 weeks ago. We continued our discussion of traffic mitigation and safety issues at Whetstone Drive and Crosby Street. We had a discussion about snow plowing and accessibility of sidewalks during the winter months, and I think that's on tonight's agenda and will be part of the budget discussions going forward. We put off continuing discussions of traffic calming protocols while the subcommittee is meeting about that issue. We also had a representative from Local Motion out of Burlington here for an entire day, meeting with various constituencies, and there are some projects that are actually moving forward at this point. I would ask Barb to just speak briefly to the projects that we're going to be undertaking now and the ones we're contemplating going forward working with Local Motion.
Okay, yeah, Local Motion, as David said, it's an independent organization out of Burlington, and they have done a lot of education campaigns, specifically with educating both pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicle drivers on how to share the road. Couple of the things that we're going to be working with them on is kind of a full education campaign, which is what they do, looking at how to get out to people additional information. They've got a good help us kind of assess our own what we have, our own infrastructure, those types of things. We have also were recently notified that we had applied 2 grants, or actually 1 grant, but 2 separate projects. One is to do a engineering study on Western Avenue from Academy School to Greenleaf. That will be looking at how do we reduce the span of that road so that the pedestrian crossings, right now those are over 60 feet in places, and it's too big, and so we'll be beginning the engineering study of that. The other, that was for about $35,000. The other part of that grant was infrastructure improvements at Union Hill, Western Avenue area. Again, reducing those crosswalks there, both across the avenue and across Union Hill, are over 60 feet. And so there will be some infrastructure improvements. This has been a plan that was approved. It came before select boards probably 3 different times. They were approved in the past. We had engineering ready to go on it. And so we will be in the spring looking forward to making some of those changes. So we continue to move forward on those.
Very good. Public participation, an opportunity for you to speak to us about something that is not on our agenda here this evening. And if you would like to participate, if you would come up to the microphones, state your name and the town that you're from, and I'll give you about 2 minutes to, again, speak about anything that is not on our agenda. All right. Michael, yes.
Very short, just what you just spoke about, Barbara. So the town got the grant? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
We don't yet have the grant agreements, those types of things, so, but we did get notice that we were awarded the grants.
Okay, I would accept no one else for public participation. I would accept a motion to go into liquor commissioners.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0.
Hi, Sabine Ryan is here from the Brattleboro Food Co-op. They are requesting an education sampling event permit for their 2nd annual holiday beer and wine tasting event. Sabine, you want to talk a little bit about your event?
That's it. It's basically after work for a couple of hours. It's staffed by folks from G Housing and from the co-op. We check entry, make sure everybody's good when they come in, and we cover all the exits. So it was successful last year. There were no issues of any kind. Don't anticipate any this year. Does anyone have any questions about it?
They also have food as part of your,
That's a big part of it, yes.
yeah, and it's a very nice event.
Thank you.
I would accept the motion.
I move to approve the educational sampling event permit for the Brattleboro Food Co-op for a holiday beer and wine tasting on Friday, December 14th from 5:30 until 8 o'clock p.m. at the River Garden.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Accept a motion to adjourn as Liquor Commissioners?
Move to adjourn as liquor commissioners.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, 5-0, unfinished business.
Financial guidelines, the board has before it two guidelines. One is debt management and the other is fund balance. John O'Connor is not here this evening. He has some personal matters to attend to. This was before the board several in October sometime, October 3rd. The board requested the Finance Committee to respond back on the proposals. They did do so, actually gave a report to a special representative town meeting. The fund balance guideline basically suggests as a goal that the unassigned general fund balance be equal to about 10% of the annual general fund expenses. The representative town meeting finance committee, and I always want to say that finance committee is a committee of the representative town meeting, was in concurrence with that suggestion. The other than and obviously there is more to the guideline than just that, but that's what people tend to focus on with this. The debt service, it talks about planning performances of short and long-term debt, what the purpose of debt should be, repayment. In this policy, it is total general fund debt service as a percentage of total general fund expenditures not to exceed 12.5%. Total general fund indebtedness per capita should not exceed $1,500. Those are the representative town meeting finance committee is not in concurrence with that. But they do not suggest another. They don't make any other alternative suggestion. We would ask that the board approve the two guidelines as presented. And again, just to clarify, these are guidelines for which we should be looking at and kind of comparing ourselves to these. The actual ability to borrow debt or what amount of funding stays within, what amount of unassigned general fund reserves there are is really a decision that is made by representative town meeting as they approve the bonds and the indebtedness and the use of any reserved unassigned fund balance.
I'd be happy to make a motion in this regard.
Sure.
To approve, I move that that the select board approve the debt service and fund balance guidelines as presented.
Discussion? Dora?
I'm really concerned about the fact that the Finance Committee has said that they're not supporting this at this time. And I see Michael is here. I don't know if you can shed a little more light on what the Finance Committee is thinking about this. I know you guys just had a meeting.
All right, Michael Bosworth. A little bit more light. We wanted to take, it's a pretty complex question, so we thought there were more additional indicators and measurements that might be appropriate. And in the time that we had to come up with those and give a response by the special town meeting, we didn't feel like we had enough time to do a thorough job of that. So in effect, we said that we, basically, would not make a comment one way or the other as far as the proposal to the select board. We just didn't have enough time to do a better job of sort of laying out what we would like to see. So some of those indicators, the 2 indicators that are in there, are good indicators, but there are others as well that we thought might be appropriate. But again, we didn't feel like we had enough time to study all of that, and so we sort of defaulted to not taking a stance on it. Is that an answer of sorts?
It's an answer of sorts. So,
Just a little, can I make just a comment on the other one? And the 10% for the reserve, we felt we wanted to see it be higher than that. We were okay, and we sort of support the fact that there is now going to be a guideline that, that there will be a measurement there. That's why we're supporting it, but we think it should be actually higher than 10%.
Dora?
so then the next question I had, because I actually hadn't thought about this until I read the Finance Committee report about the issue about policies versus guidelines. A policy is more, this is the policy and you follow it. A guideline is like, well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. So are we looking for flexibility on this, and that's why we're calling it a guideline? Because it used to be called, we used to have policies. So
We never had a fund balance or a debt service policy.
okay, so we have financial policies.
We have financial policies, but we've never had these. And it was first presented as a policy. It was actually the board that suggested it be a guideline, and that was in response to the fact that the actual decision of being over or under that is made at representative town meeting. And so they were acknowledged. I think the request was to make it a guideline, so you acknowledge the fact that it's a guideline, not a policy. So that was it. I think it's, again, I think the focus, I think we can get lost in a little bit in this, because I think what we're trying to do, and the reason these are coming together, is because what you're trying to look at are looking at your fund balance and your debt service together, and how, because they impact one another. And are you going to continue? Are you going to, if you have a Michael said, we really felt that the fund balance should be higher than a 10%. You have to fund that then. You actually have to, and sometimes do, raise taxes to fund the fund balance. And you can do that. But then you're doing that at the same time as you have debt. And so you can't look at these as 2 separate policies, because in reality they're working together. And so time to time it's going to change. From time to time at this point, and you may decide, for whatever reason, you may look at debt as a better thing to have than to have money in a savings. You may at other times look and say, we want our fund balance to be higher because we're getting ready for another project that's coming. So these aren't, I think as Michael did say, they're not static, they're not independent of one another, and they're not independent of the general economy and the world in which we live. And so they really need to be taken and looked at. And again, that's why I focus more on using these as kind of a how we doing, benchmarking. How are we doing? What's the financial health of the town look like?
Well, one of the things when you're looking at fund balance, you have to look at budgeting. And if you're fortunate enough to finish your year with a fund balance, that's great. I'm very uncomfortable with the language here. If the unassigned general fund balance falls below 10%, efforts should be undertaken to restore the balance to the desired level. And that 10% number is a moving target. Every year, it's going to go higher because your general fund always goes higher every year. You know, every year that I've been on the board, we do a budget, it's always higher than the year before. So that 10% this year will not be the same as 10% next year when we're done with the general fund. And so what you are doing is you're going to have a conversation about, okay, we have this significant amount of money that we have been fortunate enough to garner because we were prudent and we had excess revenue. And now I'm going to have a discussion about raising taxes so I can get this fund even higher. And all the discussion that we have had about impact on taxpayers and the impact that's coming in terms of the police fire station, I'm very uncomfortable with having Shell entertain efforts to keep this at a certain criteria. So I'm going to make a motion to extract that language from this guideline.
So you're making a motion to
Amend this to,
Which language?
to amend that if it falls below 10, if the unassigned general fund balance falls below 10%, efforts should be undertaken to restore the balance to the desired level.
I'd like to comment on that.
Sure, you may.
I think this ought not to be a policy. I do think it's a pretty good guideline.
I'm in agreement with that it should be a guideline.
Yeah, and as such, I don't know as we really should be removing a suggested target. I like these just as they have been presented to us. I think they were thought over with great care, prepared with care, and presented really at a pretty good time, where we're just about to go in and need to draw from the wisdom of this. I like it just as it is, and my preference is to accept it just as written.
I don't have any concern with changing the word undertaken to considered. If the unassigned general fund balance falls below 10%, all efforts should be considered to restore the balance to the desired level.
I would agree there, David.
And that is advisory in nature, but recognizes that we're seeking to maintain that goal. Does that work for you, Dick?
Well, that's much more palatable than the language that's there right now.
Okay.
I would accept that as a friendly, can you do
Do you
it?
want to withdraw yours?
I'll withdraw my amendment.
And then
All
that's a
right, so
friendly amendment.
my friendly amendment is to strike the word undertaken in the third from the last line on the second page of the fund balance policy, and change undertaken to considered. So the unassigned general fund balance falls below 10%, efforts should be considered to restore the balance to the desired level.
Christopher,
I'm
you've
fine with
accepted that?
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Barb, could you please explain, I think we had some explanation before from the finance director, why the 12.5% total general fund debt service
It was just a
figure
number.
was chosen, and why $1,500 per capita was chosen? Do those relate to averages that we see with other municipalities?
Those are looking at taking into where we thought our debt would be. So you could make it lower, you could make it higher. Again, it's a target.
My recollection is that he was drawing on VLCT guidelines himself.
That's what I recall.
Yeah.
Any other comment or? So we shall vote. All those in favor of the amended language signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 5-0. And now you go back to the original
Actually, it was a friendly
friendly
amendment, so
amendment.
we're
That's
okay.
right. Okay, so we're good.
So we're done.
So we're done.
I'm sorry.
New business, small business Assistance Program Loan, SBAP. Zachary Corbin is here. You guys want to come up? Sure. Zachary came before the SBAP Small Business Assistance Loan Committee requesting a loan of $40,000. He, in part, to finance in part the acquisition of Peter Haven's Restaurant at 32 Elliott Street. The committee recommends that this loan be granted with the following terms: 5 years, 60 monthly payments, 3% interest rate compounded monthly. Monthly payment amount to be $718.75 due on the first of each month, and the first payment to be due on the first of the month following 60 days from the date of disbursement. There were some loan commitment contingencies, and those have been met. So I don't know if Zachary, you want to talk about what your plans are?
It's been quite the process, learning experience, but we're on target for closing tomorrow with the current owners, Tom Dolan and Greg, and I plan on some minor renovations with my father, and we're reopening on the 15th, which is a Thursday.
Cool.
That's about it, where I'm at.
I would accept a motion.
Did you read the whole thing?
You have to.
Okay. I move to approve a $40,000 small business assistance program loan for Zach Corbin for the purchase of Peter Haven's Restaurant at 32 Elliott Street with the following terms: 5 years, 60-month payments, 3% interest rate compounded monthly. Monthly payments of $718.75 to be due on the first of each month. First payment to be due on the first of the month following 60 days from the date of disbursement. The loan is contingent upon primary financing being in place, a personal guarantee from the borrower and the borrower's father, and the borrower obtaining a term life insurance policy assigned to the town in an amount to cover the note.
Further discussion? Dora?
I just want to say that Zach has this great food cart that he's had outside of Peter Haven's for, a couple of years now. Makes great food, really good service, and I think this is really exciting, and this is another example of a young person coming in and changing of the generations and deciding to live here and deciding to do business here.
Thank you, Dora.
Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you very much.
The board is asked to ratify a subordination and intercreditor agreement between the town of Brattleboro and Commonwealth Dairy, and then also CEI Capital Management, MHIC, any new markets, and Vermont Rural Ventures. This is currently the town has a CDBG loan, $700,000 as a first generation from CDBG and $100,000 that the town has loaned to them. We are currently in last position, following about $6 million of debt. They applied for funding again through the New Market Tax Credit Program, and that's why there are all these various LLCs that are involved
It's
for
complicated.
approximately another $6 million, and that is to add on to their business, and it would. And so that would add on to their business. This is a request for ratification. The board was actually asked to hear this at a special meeting that was scheduled for last Monday that we ended up canceling due to the storm. And so we maintain our position in last place, but we follow about another $6 million. So we're last position of a $12 million. And the real risk for us would be the $100,000, because the other $700,000 was the CDBG first generation funding.
Accept the motion? To ratify.
I move that the select board ratify the loan subordination agreement between the town of Brattleboro and Commonwealth Dairy.
Discussion?
Laura, can
Finish
you
that.
just confirm for us that the town and the new wastewater treatment facility has got the ability to handle the increased volume? And are there any special accommodations that need to be made for the type of waste that they're generating?
No, at this point, we actually entered into an agreement with them prior to this, where they got their wastewater permit by the state amended. That has been amended, and so they were good with that prior to this being proposed.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the real upside here is we are looking at Commonwealth Yogurt has a tax stabilization agreement with the town of Brattleboro. Part of that agreement was creating 25 jobs. Presently, there are 108 people working there, and with the new addition, there'll be an additional 35 to 40 jobs. So it has had a real impact in our area in terms of job creation, good paying jobs with benefits, and I know I am extremely excited and happy for the success of Commonwealth Yogurt. We were there on Thursday with the governor, and I think it was a great day for Brattleboro, so I'm in full support of this. Further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Next, the board is asked, it's been 2.5 years now, probably, when we received notification from the state that we were receiving $300,000 in transportation enhancement grant funding. The money was put on hold while they did the repaving. They didn't actually send a grant agreement until that project was finished. The Transportation Enhancement Grant Program is actually a very pretty bureaucratic grant program. Has a lot of steps involved with it. In addition, the town has additional funding of about $250,000 for this downtown sidewalk project. We solicited, working with our VTrans program manager, we did an RFQ, request for qualifications for engineers to give us a proposal on how they would attack the project. The proposals were evaluated on understanding of the project, knowledge of project area, technical availability of technical disciplines, if they were going to use like a landscape architect as in addition to other engineers, that type of thing. Qualification, experience of staff, ability to meet schedules and budgets, past performance on similar projects, knowledge of federal and state standards and policies. Of particular importance to us was the fact that they had worked on transportation enhancement grants before within the state, and that they had done sidewalk projects like that. We are now requesting from the board that the board authorize me to enter into contract negotiations with Dufresne Group, and then to come back to the board for contract execution. Dufresne Group ranked the highest. The project manager from VTrans, myself, our Gary King, our engineer technician, Steve Barrett, Jerry Goldberg with the chamber, reviewed applications, or reviewed the proposals that were submitted by the 6 different firms. Dufresne Group has done a couple of pretty good-sized sidewalk projects utilizing transportation enhancement grant funding. And so that would be then the request that we enter into negotiations with them to do the work on this. Since this is all started, our VTrans program manager has retired. We have a new one assigned to us. She too is in agreement with moving forward with executing this contract. These contracts are similar because, again, of the regulations by the state, similar almost to those engineering contracts that you're used to seeing for the wastewater treatment plant, in that there's a lot of, engineering services can't be more than a certain percentage of the total construction, that type of thing. So it's somewhat of a minimal contract to negotiate in a lot of ways because it has a lot of requirements already in place. With this, we would see engineering to start when the contract is executed, and then there would be, in particular, there are several steps in which the engineering firm would be doing, reaching out to businesses, residents that would be in the area. One of the things we talked about with this sidewalk project is doing a lot of the work at night so that businesses could stay open during this work, and it wouldn't cause as much trouble with traffic. The downside of that is noise. That is actually how we did most of the Route 5 paving and signalization was at night. So we have done it that way before. But those are some of the things we're looking at, but we have included in our proposal that there would be several public participation meetings in which they would try to get input into this prior to seeking construction contracts. In the administrative report, I had also requested the authority to enter into a contract with Wyndham Regional Commission for project management in an amount not to exceed $5,000. I'm actually withdrawing that request at this time. I spoke with the VTrans project manager about this, and she suggested that I need to get to use Wyndham Regional Commission, which is she supports the idea of using them as a project manager. But we actually need, through the Transportation Enhancement Grant Program, I need special permission to enter into a contract, and she suggests that I get it from the state prior to asking the board for the authority.
Good idea.
With that, I am just asking for the authority to enter into contract negotiations with DuFour.
I have a question. Yes. I seem to recall when reading the town plan numbers about how much sidewalk we have and how many miles of road we have. I think it was 80 miles of roads and like 20 miles of sidewalks. Am I remembering that correctly?
I don't remember. It's paved roads. I think it's about 80.
80 miles, right.
Paved. I don't remember sidewalks.
How much additional sidewalk or how much new sidewalk does $500,000 buy, and where are we planning on focusing this work?
It's downtown work. Because that's where the Transportation Enhancement Grant was focused, and we would be looking at actually starting from on Bridge Street from the railroad tracks and coming up on the easterly side of Main Street, past Key Bank and such, coming up to as far up as we can go, which we would hope we can get in front of the Gibson-Higgins, but we're not sure if we'll get it that far.
So there were sections of sidewalk that were replaced last year and the year before. Is the plan to replace them again?
No.
No.
Well, it depends on most of the repairs that were done during the paving project were actually on the westernly side of Main Street. We were able to do almost that in a good chunk of the block between High and Elliott, and some on the other between Elliott and Flat, but a shorter distance. This would then be more, the work we did on the easterly side was they added the bulb outs, which we wouldn't be doing any work on the bulb outs. They also did some of the crosswalks. We may or may not be redoing those depending on what they didn't do during the repaving project is they didn't level out the granite curbing, and this project would have us leveling out the granite curbing, which means we would be cutting it out and resituating it so that it was even.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that this major project going on would meld very neatly with the major project going on with the
Across the street.
with the Brooks House. Yeah, I don't know if there's some opportunity to avoid two cuts. For
We'd be on the easterly side, so it would not.
not going to affect them at all.
No.
Okay. And also on where we have that brand new Kyle Bridge at the Plaza intersection, that sidewalk, was put in with great care. It looks okay. Is that going to be replaced? Where the bridge, where it comes up around the corner where the flower boxes are from?
No,
No?
no, that's all good sidewalk there.
Okay, right. Great.
Dora?
Well, you were talking about trying to have minimal effect on folks down there. I know that people were fairly pleased during the paving project, except for some of the people who were, upset about the paving at night who wanted to sleep. But as far as the business owners and a good number of the residents, they were pleased about the communication and the efforts to try to make, so I'm hoping we're going to be using the same, kind of, communication and using the same sort of guidelines as to how to, because that seemed to work very well during that project.
Apropos of sidewalk safety, I would note that in the middle stages of the redevelopment of the Co-op Plaza, there were some real concerns about safety at the intersection. But it does look as though the redevelopment of the parking lot is very, very well designed, and that the crosswalks that will lead into the new Co-op building from the Whetstone Brooks side of that parking lot are very well designed to make sure that there's good visibility across that lot and to make those sidewalks and those crosswalks very obvious. And I'm very pleased with the safety features that appear to be going in there at this time as well.
There still is, as they're doing that project, they also have a lot of line striping they're to do. They were going to try to get that done this week, but with the supposedly some weather, they're going to be doing that next week. So that will help. That will increase that as well, improve that as well.
Could do a motion.
Yes, you can.
Okay. I move to authorize the town manager to enter into contract negotiations with Dufresne Group and to come back to the board for contract
They did the
execution.
water.
Further discussion?
Just one.
Sure.
The spelling of Dufresne, I think there's a transposition there. I think it's Dufresne.
I was wondering about that too.
Yeah, it used to be Dufresne and Henry,
Yeah.
and it was always an interesting word to me when I was growing up, and I can't imagine they changed the name.
But the important thing is I said it right.
You
There
did
you go.
say it right.
You did.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all that I would add there, just some nitpicky, but probably important to somebody with that name.
All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, thank you.
Brian Waterman is here with the Connecticut River Transit. Want to come on up to the table?
I was going to write Mary about Ohio State.
Yeah, she's in a rocket meeting.
People may know, should know. They're about a month ago.
Yeah.
There were changes to the Beeline bus service in Brattleboro. Those came after there was a study that was commissioned.
Right.
And using some of the results of that. And one of the reasons we've asked Brian to be here tonight is because we've been getting some negative feedback on the schedules. We got some negative feedback on how the changes occurred. We've talked with Brian and Mary about those. And I think, Brian, if you don't mind, if you could talk to us, if you could explain to us a little bit about what precipitated the changes and what the changes actually are.
Well, we've added a new route, but it's not fully funded, so it only runs about 6 hours a day. We tried to make quicker headways. One of the complaints I got was from the West Brattleboro Association saying early in the morning you can't get from West Brattleboro to Brattleboro. There's an hour-and-a-half delay. So if that's a concern you had, it used to be a 2-hour delay. So some of the concerns are coming from people who aren't riding, and they just haven't looked at the old schedules. But we're trying to serve places like the retreat where we never went, the dairy, the VA clinic, and we even go up to Guilford now. Another complaint we had was we're not running late enough on Western Avenue. So we looked at that and said, yeah, you're right. So we added another leg on that. Another time we weren't coming back late enough. We park our buses at Tarmy's. So we were ending one route right up at Hannaford's there. But people said, we need you to come back into the transit center one more time. So we've done that. We're listening to the changes people have asked us for, and where they make sense, we're trying to do them. I don't know if there's any specific ones you have that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're, the general things that I've heard is just that they're not running often enough, and that may be just confusion about the schedule. People are annoyed about it going out to Hinsdale if they're not getting their routes in Brattleboro, and again, that may be confusion. But what that's what I'm hearing is that they're not running often enough. The connections are not necessarily being made. Sometimes these things, and they're not running late enough. Now, I'm glad to hear you added the extra one on Western Avenue, because I think that was a big deal for people.
Right.
I'm not sure, whether or not that's late enough for people, because I'm not sure, I'm not sure what the schedule is and how late they're running, because people didn't think they ran late enough originally, and now it's been changed. So
Well, it stops at Mountain Home at 6 p.m. I mean, after that, there's not a lot of ridership, and it's increased funding. If we had that, we could run more. I think the frequency of the trips are more than they were before. I think they're getting more frequent service. There was a lot of times before where you had an hour and a half wait for your bus to go around, and now it's mostly 40 minutes.
Can you just speak to the Hinsdale connection? Because I know there are a lot of people out there who are feeling like maybe they're getting shortchanged. So just for public knowledge, what the breakdown of funding is and how that's worked out.
The town of Hinsdale has voted for, I believe, the last 3 years to put $15,500 into transit. We didn't think that was enough in and of itself for us to go over there. So we applied to the state of New Hampshire for job access, reverse commute funding, what they call JARC funding. Nobody thought we'd get any money from New Hampshire, but we got $18,000 for them. So we're getting $33,000 from New Hampshire. So we are going into the village of Hinsdale, but there's more service in Brattleboro. Despite that, there's another 16 hours a week service in Brattleboro that wasn't there before. So we're trying to squeeze more out of the resources we have, and we think we're doing all right. Is it perfect? Does it meet everybody's needs? No. I mean, if we had all the funding, we could probably do that, but the study said to build this out perfectly or ideally, it would be $750,000 a year. Well, we don't have half of that, so we're doing the best we can with what we've got.
What is, Brian, and thank you for coming down here this evening. What is your ridership from Hinsdale into Brattleboro? Because obviously people may be complaining, but that's enhancing business in our community.
It's bringing people up. It's been slow. We haven't done a bang-up job putting a nice schedule out because we wanted to take our licks up front, hear what the problems are. Well, it costs $5-10 grand to get a new schedule put together, and I would rather not do that and say, you got to do this, you got to make this change. So it's minimal so far from Hinsdale if you don't count Walmart. If you count Walmart, it's big.
So you're taking people from downtown Hinsdale, dropping them at Walmart?
No, most of those people are coming into, like I got a call from a veteran today, what time can I get on the bus to get to the VA clinic? He says, I got to get there. I know there's people from this Rolling Hill, it's a senior community over there. I have some riding into Brattleboro. I don't know what they're doing here. Hoping they're spending money here, but I don't know that.
So you've really expanded the route since you've taken it over from us?
Yes.
In terms of other stops, if you're going to the VA, which is a great facility, and I was actually up there for a ceremony with Senator Sanders, and I did tell them that utilization of that is underused actually by the veterans in our area, and I would give them a plug to say that it is a great facility, that will save you from going to Keene. I think there's another facility, but most of the people I know head up to White River Junction,
Right.
and they can stay here.
And we thought, if a disabled veteran could only get as far as Price Chopper, we weren't doing very well by them, so.
That's right.
Let's get them to their appointment, so.
Barb?
The complaint I've heard is that people are having to wait at the transportation center longer.
Well, it's hard to say, wait for what? Because you had 2 buses before, one only ran six hours a day and the other ran 12. So you might have been waiting around West Brattleboro for 2 hours for that bus to come around before. And now maybe you get to the transit center and have to wait 10 minutes to get on a different bus to go where you want to go. I would say if you looked at the Saturday schedule, you could see the idea of what we want to do. We're funding 3 routes fully on Saturdays. We don't have the funds to do that every day of the week, so we try to supplement it. We have a bus that comes from Bellows Falls to Brattleboro 4 times a day. We're trying to use that to make some of the in-town stops. But on Saturday, we got 3 built-out routes that cover the whole area, and if we had that funding, it would be more of what we'd like to do.
Are there other people here who?
Yes. And if you come up to the microphone and state your name.
My name is Paula Melton. I live in West Brattleboro. I've been riding the B-line for 6 years since I moved here. And I just want to mention, you said, oh, the gap is smaller in the morning. But I think, hearing all these bulk numbers about, oh, there's 16 hours more service, there's a smaller gap in the morning, that really doesn't get at the issues which riders are having, which is something like you're saying, well, it's people who don't ride. Actually, it's people who do ride who are used to a certain thing. And so one of the things that I personally am used to is being able to take the bus to work. And I have a 9-to-5 job. So I can't take the bus to work anymore. And nobody who has a 9-to-5 job can take the bus to work anymore because it doesn't get here till after 9. Or you can come and be here at 7:30, but that doesn't make sense. So I guess kind of what I'm looking at is, does each of the routes make sense for what people need it for? So I had some questions that I wrote down. I have 3 questions, and I'm wondering, do you want me to ask each one or ask them all 3 and then you just answer them?
Why don't you ask them to me, and then I'll look over there. So
Great.
direct your questions up here.
Okay, so the first one is about communication. The schedules at bus stops are still wrong. The only way to actually get a schedule online is to go to a Facebook page and get a little tiny fuzzy image. And it's been a month. So I'm wondering at what point CRT realized that they would not be able to communicate the changes adequately to their riders, and why they went through with those changes anyway. And what they did to prepare drivers and the office staff to respond to the complaints, which they must have known would be inevitable. The second question is...
Well, why don't we answer the first question?
Okay.
Well, communication should have been better, I grant you that. Service to West Brattleboro could be better in the morning. Sorry it affects you, but I have to use that bus to work on Route 9 too. So instead of having that 2-hour gap in the morning, you have an hour and a half now. It's not perfect for you, so I can't make it perfect for you.
Well, it's not. I'm not saying it's not just about me. It's about anybody who wants to be at work or take their child to daycare for a 9 o'clock time, and that's a very common time. That was a very popular bus that got downtown at 8:40. So it's not. I'm not complaining about my own personal situation. I'm saying that it doesn't serve the needs of downtown commuters.
Brian, what is the ridership versus the change, the earlier bus now versus obviously the bus that Paula was taking?
It's probably a little less right now.
And so is there a possibility that we could push that time out to make it more...
We can certainly look at it, yes.
Make it more conducive to the heavier ridership, which was affected by moving the time frame to an earlier time. Would that be amenable to you?
Well, we can look into it. You know, I can't say we can do it right away, but we can look and see if that works.
Can you tell me, when's the bus in Westby now in the morning? The first, when's the first bus?
Come in, 6:20.
6:30, yeah.
It's 6:30, and then
7:12.
then 7:30.
10 of 8.
Okay.
10 of 8, one comes in?
Yeah.
But that one arrives after 9. I don't know how that works.
You know, that would arrive before 9.
Well,
I'm trying to figure out how it changed from the other one, from the way it had been. That's why I'm confused.
yeah,
Before you had-
there used to be a gap of 2 hours. There was a really early bus.
You had a really early bus, and then you had another bus that could
an
get you here
8:30,
by
a
8:30, quarter to
9:30,
9.
a 10:30, and it was
Yeah.
very easy to remember.
Right.
And then there was a gap in the middle
And
of the
so
day.
now you have the early.
You got 2 early buses, and then
And then there's a gap.
together in midday.
Okay. Okay.
Dora?
It's hard to figure out.
So Paula makes a good point, and I understand the difficulty in being able to schedule things and being able, and all of the factors, all of the stops that you have to factor in. But when you're talking about sort of usage, the common times for people to work are 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So it makes sense to try to fix the schedule so that there is a bus that arrives downtown between 7:30 and 8 o'clock and a bus that arrives downtown between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. That just makes sense.
It does make sense. But there's jobs that start at 7 o'clock, Adamago, Optical, and Commonwealth area. And that's a retreat in different areas in town. So we're trying to serve too much with too little resources.
Yeah,
So where's the balance?
Could we speak to the communication issue a little
Sure.
bit that I originally brought up? Just about, how did it come about that you went through with changes that you were apparently unable to communicate to riders who ended up standing outside waiting for buses that never came?
Well, we started out by having public meetings right here. And we made schedules out and distributed them. And
So the reason I heard about these changes, and I don't ride the bus as often in the warmer months, the reason I heard about these changes is because I happened to be on the bus, and I happened to overhear the bus driver say to someone who got on, "Next week you're not going to be able to work as late." That's how I knew this was happening. So the Beeline has changed its schedule before. When the town was running the bus, they changed the schedule and they changed the fares. They had signs up on the buses for 3 months telling people this is going to change. You have ad space on your buses. There are bus stations. There are all these ways you could communicate with people. So I don't understand why that didn't happen, and I don't understand why you thought you had communicated.
can't answer that. Should have done a better job letting you know.
Okay.
Next question.
So the next question is, I'm wondering, we've talked about some of the things about the schedule that don't make sense to people who actually ride the bus. So I'm wondering what metrics you use to decide that it would, you wanted to have these time slots. There's an 11:37, a 12:31, a 1:05, and a 1:49 leaving from Mountain Home in West Brattleboro. And yet in the morning, we don't have these commuter routes. What metrics did you use to decide that midday time was a higher priority than the commuter ends of the day?
When we took over the Beeline, we started tracking of where the stops people were getting picked up at the time. And that's what we used.
Mm-hmm. But you're saying that now that you've changed it, you're getting fewer people in the morning.
Well, we haven't made a big advertising push either, to what the changes are and what the final changes are going to be.
It's a bit of an understatement. Okay, so I guess the next question that I had, and I mentioned before that the Beeline schedule has changed, the communication was very good, the bus has always been extremely reliable, and when you take that away from people, it's like you steal their car. I mean, personally, I own a car, and I am taking the bus and walking and riding my bike as a choice. but a lot of people don't have that, and they can't be here right now, and they can't come to public meetings. So my question is, why, given how poorly this communication has been handled, I'm wondering why you feel the town of Brattleboro should continue to engage services with CRT.
Because I think we're going to do a better job and provide better transportation than has been in the past.
Can I?
David?
So my question is not about the specific routes and the specific times, but about the nature of the interaction between the bus contractor and the administration about what's being proposed and then how it's being communicated. Because if we're funding these services and then there's going to be changes in those services, it would seem the right way to proceed is for the contractor to notify the administration and for those changes or proposed changes in service to be reviewed as to whether they make sense, and then to make sure that they are then communicated to the ridership, which is what we're paying for. So how does that work?
Well, a couple things. One is to remember that we do give, the town does give to Connecticut River Transit $50,000. The town has always put $50,000 towards the Beeline service. The rest of that money is grant funding that CRT gets directly from the state. They did, with our knowledge, they hired a consultant who came in who did a variety of public meetings, had some different stakeholder meetings, and which they then took that and they then did another public meeting in which they talked about what proposed changes there were. The problem with that, from my perspective, or from where I'm sitting, is it's hard to, when you're looking at this to that, when you're looking at bus schedules, to kind of figure out all the implications. And so you really aren't going to know your implications until you put them in place. I think that with regard to Connecticut River Transit versus the town operating the bus system, I want to be really clear that CRT does an excellent job. They've been operating the bus for...
Be 2 years next week.
Yeah, it'll be 2 years next week. I think that we have had a good service. We have better equipment. And they've kept most of our same drivers, unless they've happened to leave. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And part of the reason we had Brian come tonight was because it was hard for me, even when you know the schedules, but it was hard to hear what some of the complaints were and to figure out how they fit together, because some of, transit schedules are difficult. And one of the things that I would say is when you make a change to a schedule, there will always be some people who it's going to impact theirs. If I'm thinking for myself where I live up in Sherwood Circle and would ride the bus, and it was always, I'd get into work late or I'd get into work really early. Well, I can tell you which one and I'm looking at the new schedule thinking, I could probably get in time. So it's depending on what time you start, you're going to impact people differently. Mm-hmm. I think that the biggest issue, the biggest problem we had, Paula's not the only person I heard this from, which was the communication to the ridership is typically done through your drivers, because that's who sees the riders. They are the people who can hand out a new schedule. They're the people who can say it's changing. I don't think, it's not Brian who's communicating with the ridership, really. I think that I think that it was clear that there was a lack of communication of what the schedule was actually going to be, even to the drivers. And, when I talked with Mary Habig and Brian 2 weeks ago, they both said, yeah, we didn't do a good job doing that.
Well, I think we understand from what I've heard what unfolded, and I would just like to request that going forward, if there's going to be changes in schedule that are going to impact riders, that CRT and the town and administration coordinate and communicate better about what changes are being proposed, and then make sure that the riders are aware of those in a timely manner so that misunderstandings are avoided. We had a lot of correspondence in the last month from impacted riders. A lot of correspondence coming through.
On the street, too.
Can
Yep.
I ask Brian, there are people, I want to thank Paula for coming tonight, because I understand that when you ask a bus rider to come to a meeting at 6:15 on a Tuesday night, that it's not lost on me that we don't have transportation to the meetings. So I thank you for coming. How do we enable, how can you collect information now?
What kind of information? You mean ridership information?
No, I know you'll do your ridership information. If there are, so if I get a specific complaint about the schedule right now, should I just forward that to you?
Sure.
How would you like
we
people to handle
probably
that?
heard all the complaints you've had. We've
Right.
probably seen
Well,
all
yeah.
the same things. So. And we don't take them lightly. We look and see what we can do, and we look at the funding and say, could we add that other trip? I'd love to. I'd love to add a lot more trips in Brattleboro. I think it's underfunded here. I'm not talking about your portion. I'm talking about looking at other places in the state. So.
Dora?
One of the things when we made the decision to turn the bus over to CRT, we were supposed to have a representative on the board. And Mary keeps bugging me because she says, that, and I know Barb has
I've just started going.
just started going to the meetings now, but originally we hadn't, we weren't really having anybody going up there. And Mary's been bugging me for more than a year because I see her at the Transportation Committee meetings for the Wyndham Regional Commission. And I was trying to recruit people. But of course, most of the people who have knowledge about the bus can't really go up to Bellows Falls for a morning meeting. So, I'm glad Barb's starting to look. I mean, starting to go. I knew that wasn't going to work for me, so, I tried to find other people. But, that's, I think, been one of the issues as well, is there hasn't necessarily been anybody sitting up there in those meetings, the board meetings, and when these discussions are happening, sort of thinking about Brattleboro from a Brattleboro perspective. And I think that'll help having somebody up there.
Well,
I'd like to ask one thing, and that is with regard to the Facebook page and other things. Is there a clearly legible schedule out there now?
I can grab you one.
Well, you don't need to grab me one. I just want to know. One of the complaints we heard was that it was difficult to get the information, and where you got the information, it wasn't clear. But is it now?
I would say on Facebook, it's okay. It's not great. On our website, the people who design our website want $120 an hour to make the changes. So we're in the process of looking for a new web designer to put it out there better. But right now, it's not perfect.
Okay. So this difficult transition to the new schedule has been made, and ridership is aware of it? Is that so? So we're hearing about the difficulties that existed in that transition, right? When the transition is over? Is that correct?
The schedule is still not on the website. There are old schedules on the website.
Really?
Yes.
So
Something's wrong with this picture.
as a minimum, we'll make sure that every bus driver has schedules to give out to its ridership.
Okay.
I was a big supporter of turning the bus system over to CRT, primarily because I believe that they could do a better job than the municipality. That's not our forte. And they have increased the route. They have increased the time in terms of headway, and I don't know exactly, but I believe that ridership is up. So there are a lot of pluses, and we're focusing here on the negatives. But I think that we can fix the negatives mainly by better communication. And so you have our support, but you have our support only to a certain point, that you have to make sure that you follow through on your effort. And if you don't follow through on your effort, the next time we won't be so friendly when you come down before us. And we won't be in this wonderful mood that we're in. Ken?
I mean, there's got to be a way to take down the schedule on the website. I'm not even talking about putting the new one up, but at least putting on there that when people go on the site, they're not seeing an incorrect schedule without notification. That's got to be something that you guys can do in-house. You don't need to hire another company for that, to put some sort of banner, even if it doesn't make you guys look great, that says, this schedule that you see on this site is not right. We're trying to upload a new one. But people can't go to the site right now and see an incorrect schedule as they've been doing for a month. That's got to be something you guys can do in-house.
Yeah.
I hope so. I'll look into it tomorrow.
Last comment, Dora?
Just to go back to the communication thing again, and thank you for saying that you goofed on that. But Paula was mentioning what happened when the Beeline changed the schedule the last time, and it's sort of, that is a common. I mean, over the years, I've taken public transportation in New York and different places, and it's pretty commonplace to do a massive campaign of putting signs up and using the advertising space to notify people that the schedule is changing. What I'm hearing you, what I heard you say earlier in the beginning is that you were trying to do a little bit of a soft rollout because you weren't sure whether the schedule was going to be like. But you can't do that. This is like people's lives, so you can't do a soft. It's not like a restaurant. You can't do a soft opening. So I think in an effort to try to sort of save money, and you could have done the schedule on flyers without doing it just doesn't work for public transportation. So for the future, let's make sure we use sort of the standard of how you inform people about these changes.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula, for coming down and voicing your concerns. Rescue. We've been waiting here patiently all evening.
All right, have representatives from, pardon me? What? Oh, no, I was trying to see if it was good. But anyway, representatives from Rescue Inc. Mark Considine is here, along with Dara
Thank you.
just like they said. And Deborah Chapman, who is our town representative on the Rescue Board of Trustees. They're here tonight. We're going to talk about some proposed changes to the rescue bylaws. And this came to me. Deborah came and set up a meeting to talk with us about, to say they're proposing some changes to the bylaws. I'm kind of not sure, as the town rep, I would like to have some town feedback on that. We then scheduled a meeting and met with Mark and Dara and then Deborah, and we kind of went over what was proposed and what's existing. And the board you have that in your packets tonight. Just a couple of things, and I've already given these guys a heads up on where I'm going to be tonight. A couple of things. The bylaws of Rescue Inc., like many bylaws, they're older. They were recently updated in 2008. There were some changes made. Rescue Inc. is a, the organization has changed pretty significantly over the years, going from pretty much all volunteer, I think, organization to now predominantly a paid staff. Has increased its professional levels, is also, the service it provides has changed over the years, as so many other organizations. What is being proposed as a change are changes to the Board of Trustees, and how the board members, both the size of the board as well as how those members are elected. There are two groups within Rescue. One is the membership, and the membership is made up of three different categories. One's essentially paid staff or staff who provide medical services. The other are honorary or lifetime members, and then the third is the Board of Trustees. Current configuration of that is there are about 61 employees who are members, 15 lifetime, couple of support, and then there's a possibility of having 21 Board of Trustee members. We don't actually have that many. Board of Trustees are made up of representatives from the 15 participating towns, 3 at large, and then another 3 volunteer members.
Volunteer membership, yeah.
So currently the membership is made up of almost 75% employees. The membership has specific duties and powers as are explained in the bylaws. The Board of Trustees has specific duties and powers as described in the bylaws. The membership actually currently has the ability to amend the bylaws. That's where the amending of the bylaws takes place, is by the membership. And it is by a petition that came for this proposed amendment. The Board of Trustees as currently configured, as I said, is 1 representative from each of the towns, 3 individuals at large, 3 individuals from the providers or from the memberships. What is being proposed are changes that would, one, they would change some of the standing committees. They would eliminate a couple of committees, the Operations Committee, Clinical Practice Committee. They would add some different ones, Board Membership Liaison, Board Town Liaison. But the more significant change is that the Board of Trustees would actually be, it would be a group of 9 to 15 people who would be, the trustees would be, there would be a nominating committee that would be comprised of the Board of Trustees and I think would be comprised of a minimum of 3 members of the board. Additional committee members can and should be recruited as required to help ensure the board's nominees reflect Rescue's commitment. The nominating committee then would select candidates for appointment to the board and trustees would be elected from the list of nominees put forward by the board at the annual meeting of the membership. So the list of nominees shall be elected by the membership at the annual meeting. My concern with what is being proposed, the goal of, I believe, of what is being proposed is to change the Board of Trustees, because now, to change it in such that it's right now it can be up to 21 members, that's a lot of people. Some of the towns don't don't have people come. And so what they're trying to do is get maybe a more cohesive, maybe more professional kind of board of trustees is the intent. My concern with this is that I feel it's a little bit of, my concern with this is that you have a membership which is 75% employees who are union employees who are now electing the Board of Trustee members, which would be similar to if the representative town meeting members were elected by the employees of the town. That I don't necessarily, I'm not suggesting that there's something, bad in what's being suggested, but I think that the checks and balances that every organization needs are eroded by what is being proposed here. Whether or not, so I don't even get to the question of whether or not the town wants to continue to be able to have, town should be able to continue to have a representative on the Board of Trustees of Rescue, because to me, I don't even get that far because it's, the way this is done is that the membership has too much power in this case. They have the power both to amend bylaws, they maintain and retain the power to amend the bylaws, and they gather and get the power to elect the Board of Trustees, which is the board who would be signing their labor contracts. So I would strongly urge the board, and I will obviously allow an opposing view if there is one at the table, to talk, but I am very alarmed by this, and I think Brattleboro has one vote of the membership, so the board has the ability to talk with one person, and that's Deborah. But I personally am concerned about this, and again, not trying to say that anyone is not trying to point fingers or anything. Again, I just think that a healthy organization has a healthy system of checks and balances.
If you'd like to respond.
Well, okay, let me start. I don't know how you, this is Dara Kennemewy talking, so you have a record of it. The history of the board, the bylaws were originally written about 45 years ago, and Chuck Cummings may have been the one who originally wrote them. And as Barb has indicated, it's largely volunteer, at that point it was largely a volunteer organization, and it's not anymore. But the method of governance on the documents has remained the same. As a practical matter, the way this has worked over the past few years is obviously, we come to you and request a town subsidy, as we do with all the towns that we service, and that money is needed, to say the least. Not that it's a quid pro quo, but historically each of the towns that would elect to send a representative to the board has a vote on the board's business. And the rewording of the Constitution, the composition of the board, would essentially deprive the town of that vote. That's not to say Brattleboro can't have someone on the board, but right now when you appoint a representative, loyalty of that representative well, there's a conflicted loyalty, but they do have a duty to the town they represent to make their opinion known. And that's the way it's worked in the past. And the way it's reasonable to read the language in the petition is that that would change and the towns would actually lose that input.
Well, I think I would have a tendency to agree with Barb's position, because there is a potential for us, being the biggest shareholder in your organization, which you are no different in reality than Wyndham Solid Waste. And our representation there carries significant weight, more weight there than it does in your organization. We are 1 for 1 in your organization, and I think we are 6 for 2 up there, which we should be. We're the biggest payer. And one of the things that I do know, that if this goes through, this would probably cause us to say, maybe we don't want to be a part of rescue anymore, and we go out and put this out to bid to see who can give us a better price and provide the same service. And so there are implications here that I would agree with Barb, that letting the foxes watch over the hen house is not a good practice. There does need to be checks and balances. And having your employees vote on the board of directors, I cannot support that at all. And then there's no guarantee that the biggest payer into the organization might not have representation on the executive committee as you are presenting it. That is not good for us as a municipality. Dora?
Well,
You're clear.
being part of a board of another organization that has its membership elect the board, BCTV, but it's, BCTV doesn't have a finite number of members, so the members are expansive because they're members of the community, so the employees can and are members of the organization and do vote in the annual meeting elections for the board, but they're not, and obviously it's not a union thing, it's a much smaller group of employees, so it doesn't have as much of an effect. I share the concern if that's the case about the employees, because that's not a good thing. I also, from the perspective of just sort of like boards in general, over the years I've tried to do a lot of board development workshops, trying to help with some of the boards that I'm on, and what I've learned is it's never good for a board to have all of its members come in in one way. So to have all of the members of the board be elected by the membership, as opposed to whether they are appointed from representative from something or some other form, it may not be the best way. I mean, I understand what you're trying to get at, because I've been paying attention to what it is that you're doing, trying to professionalize the board and trying to get the expertise that you need to run the organization. I get where you're coming from on that. The only other thing I'm going to say is that the number 7 to 9, you've got a whole lot of committees that you've got listed that are part of this board of the 7 to 9 people. That's a lot of committees, and it's a lot of stuff, and you're going to find that you're going to have a hard time with that, the whole 21 thing, that's a lot, I'm part of the Wyndham Solid Waste District, and it's got 19, and that it can be a lot. But if you're going to have all of these committees and you're going to expect them committees, it's, for one thing, you get more than 3 people on a committee from the board, and you've got a quorum of the board. It's 9 to 15? I thought it was 7 to 9. Okay.
But the
Well, then I stand corrected.
proposed committee membership actually
Uh-huh.
adds up to 18. So even in what you're saying, in that range, right?
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
Sorry.
I don't disagree. I mean, I certainly served on the high school board when it was a 17-member board, and they're 9 now, and still, I think that number's rather large. But with 17 people, it's almost dysfunctional to hold a board meeting and get everybody's opinion. You don't make a lot of headway in terms of big agendas. But I also think that in this formula here, that your position would be in jeopardy in terms of what's being proposed here, of management. That when you're allowing the employees to pick an executive committee and to have influence over that, that doesn't bode well for management. But
I guess my position is much more neutral. It sounds like we have one vote, Ms. Chapman, on what's going to happen here. And I'm not particularly going to express any view about Rescue Inc.'s internal governance and board-related decisions about how it's going to structure its internal workings. Other than that, there's a group of people, Ms. Chapman, who are concerned about what's going to happen. Clearly, the town needs to have input into the organization. It sounds like we're the single largest funding source for the organization, and all we can say is that to the extent that there are management-related changes that are going to happen or being contemplated, Rescue is a vendor like others, and the services that are going to be offered to us need to be cost-effective, because we've got to make a decision as part of the budget to fund them. And if changes occur, along with the management-related changes that result in costs increasing, and it becomes cost prohibitive for us, it's not clear that you can necessarily rely on the funding source going forward. And we'll just have to look at that going forward. So those are cautions for the organization as a whole from the board. I mean, there's no action that we're really requesting at this point.
No, that's right. I think
it's not our decision, really.
This comes to you because the board, as it's currently constituted, is requesting information through its representative.
I think our representative is hearing
Yeah.
that the board is probably not crazy about what's being proposed. Or managed. Sure, Chris.
Just for my information, what kinds of board members are you looking for? What is the need that is so great that you essentially are disfranchising potentially even Brattleboro from governance? What kinds of expertise are you looking at? Can you be specific, please, about this need that's led to this draft?
From what I gather, they really would like business people, people that have run large businesses with the expertise. You know, we get the town reps, and yeah, we are interested in our position, but we may not have any expertise to really benefit the board. I think there's, a lot of growth for Rescue and the board, and obviously the bylaws need to be changed to meet today's structure of Rescue, but also the future. And I think they're just looking for more guidance, more professional people that could help make those changes and recommendations. And, of course, always bring in money.
I'd like to just make a couple of observations. And one is that the tax revenue that we are asked to raise to do all our work in the town, including making a contribution to rescue, is one that requires a tremendous amount of accountability. And I just can't see not having the town per se represented on the board. I mean, are we larger than half of your patient base or customer base or call base?
It's pretty close. It's around 48% at least on the greater Brattleboro area. So it's getting very close to 50% of the volume that we do comes right out of Brattleboro.
Okay. You know, it's not really faded from my memory about the issues between management and the employees from just a few years ago that I think it would be fair to say was horrifying to read about in the newspaper. And were we to witness a situation like that where we had no representational input, I think would be very damaging in the long run to the relationship between the town and the organization. I would like to just really emphasize, as I say this, the admiration I have for the professional staff, the professional quality of all the staff work. In the way I understand rescue, it's really a model operation. And if it needs an improvement or fine-tuning of, or better, or more appropriate tuning of the governance, fine. But what I think you're asking us to do here is really not fair to the need for accountability that we have for the people who are being asked to make a major contribution to the budget.
I would be a comment that you made about professionalism and knowledge. The last guy, the 300 person that graduates from medical school is called doctor, just like the #1 student in the class is a doctor. I sometimes get offended by boards trying to look more professional. I think there is great knowledge in our community, in every community, that just because you don't have a title after your name or a position of one would call esteem in the community doesn't mean that you wouldn't be a good, dedicated board member. People are elected every day in this country to serve on boards with no criteria that they would be a good board member. That the criteria is that you will work hard to learn the position that you serve in, to understand as best that you can to serve the people who elect you. That's all I would ask of you. I don't know what your title is, I don't know what you do for a living, but I believe that what you do for us serves a purpose. So I don't need someone who is the vice president of the bank or the president of the bank or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever other profession that you want to talk about. If that's a position, a person that applies for the position that we appoint, so be it. But to go out and recruit those people to think that they're smarter than other people is very offensive to me. And actually, I would think to a lot of people, and I hope that rescue doesn't go down that tact.
Are you a nurse? I remember you being a nurse.
I am.
Okay.
I am.
You are.
Deborah worked with Rescue at one point, volunteered or worked,
Volunteered.
yeah, and has been, yeah, has been excellent. She shortchanges herself sometimes.
If there are no more
I think we're all
questions,
done.
can I say one other thing?
Sure.
I don't want any implication taken from anything that's said here that the operations of rescue look like they're going to be affected at all. I thank you for your comment about the professionalism. It's true. I don't see this impacting operations. I don't see a connection. So,
Thank you.
I don't
Thank
think
you.
anybody sees that. Yeah, no, it's been great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
thank you.
Next is a second reading public hearing for changes on Canal Street parking. This is to add on the northerly side of Canal Street, on the westerly end of the Brattleboro Co-op property in the area in front of 7 and 9 Canal Street, a total of 3 two-hour parking spaces.
Is this second reading and adoption?
Second reading, public hearing,
Public
and
hearing,
adoption.
I will open the public hearing.
Do we need to read it out loud, or we all set?
Oh, I kind of did. Appendix C, on the northerly side of Canal Street, on the westerly end of the Brattleboro Co-op property in the area in front of 7-9 Canal Street, for a total of 3 two-hour parking spaces.
Seeing no comment from the public, I will close the public hearing and accept the motion.
I move to approve the ordinance amendment to Appendix C, Article 3, adding 3 two-hour meters in the area in front of 7 to 9 Canal Street.
Further discussion? Yes.
Well, I obviously wasn't here the first time when this was discussed. I have concerns about this for a couple of reasons. I was actually out there last night looking at the cars there and thinking it didn't look very safe. This came up in the DRB hearing because the co-op requested to have parking on the... What?
They are not going to have parking on the corner. What's going on is that until that's painted, once you get past the intersection, there are 3
Farther up.
spots further up. That's where these spots are going to
This
go.
would be in front of where Henry Dieter's place was. What was the best muffler?
Best muffler. So these
So
are
up above?
These
Yeah.
are up above. Actually, almost across the street from the candy store, where
Okay.
that crosswalk is. There is no parking. That's when it came up
So
with the
They
DRB.
took,
Okay,
they took
because it did come up with the DRB, and
That's
they,
right.
they wanted
parking,
parking all the
and
way
no.
down there.
And what
And
was?
all right.
since the
we have
barrels have been there, people have been
Uh-huh.
parking there, and so I have been calling Barb every day to see if we can get that painted or the barrels put
And
back
I'm not
up.
putting them back up because I like hearing from them. They got taken down for the storm, and we called to ask them to put them back up. And it's supposed to
Okay.
get painted next week as no parking. So these are further up.
All right. That's good.
No further questions? All those in favor? Oh, excuse me, David. Oh, you're voting on it.
He was voting.
All those in favor,
He just said in
signify.
favor, we have to be back at 7:30 for
Okay.
the budget.
Okay. I thought we would just continue.
You really shortened that then.
All right, next is a
Next.
second reading public hearing, Guilford Street at the Citizens Bridge. It's a correction, it's adding, adding stop signs at Guilford Street, Western Avenue, having one there, and then Guilford Street at Citizens Bridge.
So
will
on Western?
I will open the public hearing.
There had been 2 on Western Avenue, because there were 2 from where the bridge came, from the Creamery Bridge, how it came out, and there's now 1.
Oh, okay. at
So there's
Western.
taking 1 away at Western Avenue and adding, there's 3.
This conforms the ordinance to the current configuration, which is
Okay.
a stop sign coming off the bridge both ways and the stop sign coming out the parking lot.
There you go.
This has 3 locations, so it
Right.
does.
We added last
Yeah,
week,
Okay,
We had,
Third, last
Okay.
reading.
coming out the parking lot.
okay, great, okay.
so I have opened the public hearing. I see no comment from the public.
Just have a procedural question.
Yes.
We vote on this, make this approval at the second. That means that it's in?
That's right.
Okay.
I would accept a motion.
I'll move to approve the ordinance amendment to Appendix C, Article 6, adding 2 stop signs at the intersection of Guilford Street and the Citizens Bridge.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor
Wait,
signify
it's
by...
supposed to say, and a stop sign leaving the parking area.
Would
Adding
you
three
kindly
steps.
just make a friendly amendment to that, or should I just
Yes,
restate that?
that's the
Three.
friendly amendment. And a stop sign leaving the parking area on the park side of the covered bridge.
And I will accept that as a friendly amendment.
All those in favor of the amended language signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0.
The board's asked to accept and appropriate a $500 Vermont Trails Program grant for the purpose of printing area hiking trail maps and brochures.
Move to accept and appropriate a $500 Vermont Trails Program grant from the state of Vermont.
Further discussion? Yes, Dora.
Well, just one question. I know we've talked about these little grants before and how much work. I mean, it just seemed like reading through the documents that it seemed like a lot of work for a $500 grant.
Yeah, it doesn't require any reporting back, though, so
It's all right.
that was one of the reasons, but yes,
Accountability.
you're correct.
All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
The board's asked to accept and appropriate a $500 First Wednesdays program grant from the Vermont Department of Libraries with the purpose of paying in part for the lecture series.
I move to accept and appropriate $500 First Wednesdays program grant from the Vermont Department of Libraries.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
The board's asked to approve a grant application in the amount of $11,723.07 from the Vermont Department of Public Safety Training to pay for large area search training and associated costs.
It's a very specific amount.
It's calculated on rates of pay and meals and such, and that's why, and it also fringe benefits, et cetera. And because this was a little bit more, I just brought this one before the board.
I move to approve a grant application in the amount of $11,723.07 from the Vermont Department of Public Safety Training and Exercise Grant Program.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
At traffic safety, a recommendation was made from the committee to recommend to the select board that a section of sidewalk on the south side of Western Avenue between Brookside and Melrose Bridge be added to the sidewalk plow list.
I'll speak to this. There were two motions that were made and adopted at the Traffic Safety Committee meeting 2 weeks ago. First, we had residents from the south side of Western Avenue. There is a small stretch of sidewalk between Brookside and West Brattleboro Center, like from the bridge over to Brookside. And that area of sidewalk is not plowed in the winter. And those homes, which would otherwise use that sidewalk, and the residents of those homes need to have their kids walk in the street in order to get to a crosswalk, in order to get to the other side of the street, in order to walk up past where Ziders Deli used to be, in order to get to the crosswalk to go to Academy School. And so those people came through at Traffic Safety Committee meeting in the winter and in the spring and asked for that area to be plowed. And we took it under advisement, brought it back up this fall. The discussion about sidewalk plowing and plowing of that specific piece of sidewalk has to be seen in a broader context, because we used to have, as I understand it, 3 sidewalk plows and 3 people doing sidewalk plowing of approximately 18 miles of sidewalk in the winter. We cut those funds about 10 years ago to 1 sidewalk plow and 1 person doing the plowing of approximately 14 miles of sidewalk, and that's increased now to about 16 miles of sidewalk, 1 person, 1 plow, which means that it takes about 4 or 5 days, depending on the size of the storm, to get the sidewalks in Brattleboro plowed after a storm. Adding this additional piece of sidewalk won't necessarily change that dynamic. It's still going to take 4 or 5 days after a storm to get the sidewalks plowed, but given the problems we've had with pedestrian safety and injuries and deaths of pedestrians last winter, two different motions were made and adopted at traffic safety. Number one, to add that piece of sidewalk to the plowing map, and second, to suggest to the select board that it consider funding more personnel and more plows to get the sidewalks plowed in a timely manner in the winter, rather than waiting 4 or 5 days so that people have to walk in the street when the sidewalks aren't plowed. I think the latter is something that really needs to be dealt with in the budget discussion as a whole. I don't know whether that's been added back in any form into the budget that's been presented to us. I didn't look for that line item, but the Traffic Safety Committee certainly recommended that being added into the budget, both for equipment and personnel, and also supported adding that stretch of sidewalk to the plowing map.
Is that the part over the bridge? Or?
No, it's a small section from the bridge. It says to Brookside, but it's not even, not even that far.
But between
So
Brookside,
on the eastern
It's
side.
about a tenth of a mile.
it's on the southern side,
It's on the southern side.
on the
Yeah, but-
eastern side of the bridge, just before West Brattleboro
There's like
Center.
5 houses maybe there, and the crosswalk is further from the bridge for line of sight, and so the people, it's the house that had the nice play structure, that got lost during the flood. They have to walk halfway down, and then to get to the crosswalk, to walk back to get to Cadden School. And the issue is in the winter time, although they shovel their area, others don't, and so they end up either having to cross where there's not a crosswalk, which is not something they want to do because she's got her kids with her, or to walk in the road.
Well, there's no action required here.
No, but you can take one. It doesn't, I just wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about that
Well, I mean,
here, if
I
you
would
wanted to talk
move-
about criteria. I wasn't sure how the board wanted to handle this.
I'm not sure that the Traffic Safety
Budget
Committee has the
discussions.
authority to add that piece of sidewalk back in.
They
I think
don't.
the select board has to.
No, the board
so-
has
The
to.
board
Right,
has to.
so I'm going to make a motion to add the section of sidewalk on the southern side of Western Avenue between Brookside and what's the name of the
Melrose
bridge?
Bridge.
And the Melrose Bridge back into the sidewalk plowing map, the snow plowing map.
Discussion, Dora.
Not that I'm adverse to the motion, but I'm just wondering if this should be a part of the budget discussion. I mean, I don't think that small piece of sidewalk is going to make that much of a difference, but just
Well,
from a
certainly the
procedural, just
the
from a
second half.
procedural.
Well, the second half of that has huge financial implications.
Yeah, the second motion, yeah, but not, I'm talking about adding that small piece of sidewalk. I'm not, I'm not against that. I just was wondering from a process standpoint whether or not that should just be part of the budget discussion, since we're not, well, I guess it
I
is
don't
going
think
to
it
snow.
belongs, I don't think it belongs as part of the budget discussion. I think that essentially what we're doing, if we adopt this, is saying it's going to take just a little bit longer within those 4 or 5 days to get the sidewalks plowed, and if the board decides it's going to add money in for another plow and another person to do the plowing, then the sidewalks will get done in 2.5 days instead of 5 days.
Well, maybe we should approach the school district to,
Oh, yeah, sure.
well, at least you get, there's relief at least on the school side. Right? There is. So, we have a motion on the floor to add the section of sidewalk between Brookside and the Melrose Bridge. Further discussion on that?
Yeah, how long is that?
It's probably from here to the end of the
Yeah,
municipal
it's not
building
very
away.
far.
And how many residents would be affected, roughly?
I think there
5
are
or 6
5 or 6 houses there.
5 or 6 houses there, but what about sidewalk usage?
Most people when they're walking, they walk on the northern side of that sidewalk. What the issue is here is that the crosswalk is, since we don't have a ordinance for keeping your sidewalk clear, that's why this has come forward here, because you have little kids that have to walk out on Route 9. So that's what this is all about. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, next, the board is asked to, in the RFP for the archery building, it says the board will review proposals, meet with applicants, enter into contract negotiations. So I'm asked that you set a date to meet with the two applicants, Fulcrum Arts and the Arts Place. And then I can get you all the materials that go with that.
Okay. It is too bad that we can't get here earlier on, I know that
We can get here earlier tomorrow.
we could.
Thinking.
We could stay later tomorrow, too.
Oh.
No, I mean, it would have been great to kill two birds with one stone in terms of next week on the 14th, but Christopher can't get here, and I think you have issues. And
Right.
so,
In the morning, I could on the 14th. Not in the
Probably
evening.
the beginning part. Chris just asked me if I could do
Meetings on these days is just killer.
It is. It is. It's hard.
Can we interview the two applicants or meet with them on the 20th?
Sure.
At the next
yeah,
select board meeting?
Sure,
Yeah.
prior.
yeah,
That's
we
fine.
could meet with them at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
No, not at 5. I couldn't. I can make it at 5:30.
Where, the 20th?
That's not going to be enough.
That won't be enough time.
Yeah.
Well,
Are you
before the next
expecting an executive session
A half an hour to talk to two
To talk to
applicants
two
about
applicants.
about?
archery, the
The
archery
proposals,
building.
the archery building. This is
Oh,
about the
so
archery.
yeah. Oh dear. You could start without me.
We will.
Okay.
Then
You
ought
can't
to-
do that. You can't make a decision if you don't do that.
If I got
Well,
materials.
if he's late, he's late.
Well, if I get
I won't be
the
here at
Get
all.
his material.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's
Will
right.
we have a quorum?
Well,
I mean,
I mean, Ken's not there. When are you
this is
leaving,
kind
Ken?
of a big decision to have like two
Yeah, it
new
is.
board members.
Yes.
I'm leaving on the 15th.
Especially when there's a person.
Maybe we can start at 5:15. You'd be here at 5:15?
Yeah, but Ken's not going to be there
There'll
anyway.
be four of us.
Yeah, 4.
Yes, I could do that.
Okay,
I could do that.
5:15,
okay.
please.
Okay, great.
Ken will get you the materials and you can pass on your,
Yep.
Next,
will be the,
Next meeting on the 20th.
20th.
At 5:15.
next, the board is asked to appoint Felicity Rete?
Ratty.
Rete?
No, Rete.
Rete? As a fence viewer.
I move to appoint Dr. Felicity Rate as fence viewer to serve until June 30th, 2013.
Obviously, he doesn't use
I recruited her.
all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Meetings.
In about 11 hours, the select board will reconvene here at 7:30 a.m. in the here in the select board meeting room for a budget meeting. On Thursday, November 8th at 6 p.m., there will be a basic design workshop in the Gibson-Aiken Center. On this Friday, November 9th at 10 a.m., the ADA Advisory Committee will be meeting in the Marlboro College Graduate Center. On Monday, November 12th at 8:30 a.m., just letting everyone know that everything is closed for Veterans Day. On Tuesday, November 13th, at 4 p.m., the Arts Committee is meeting in the Select Board meeting room. At 4:30 p.m., the Finance Committee is meeting in the Hannah Cosman room. At 4:30 p.m., the Wastewater Treatment Plant Upgrade Oversight Committee is meeting at the Wastewater Treatment Plant. At 7 p.m., the Tree Advisory Committee is meeting in the Hannah Cosman room. But then also on that Tuesday we're meeting.
Yes, and we're changing those 3 committee meetings to accommodate the select board meeting.
Okay, so the important thing being that the Select Board will be meeting next Tuesday at 6:50.
At 5:30.
At 5:30 p.m. For another planning about the town plan. On Wednesday, the 14th at 6 p.m., the Planning Commission will be meeting in this Select Board meeting.
That was canceled.
That was canceled today.
So wanted to let everyone know that that has been canceled. On Thursday, the 15th at 6:30 p.m., the Skate Park Committee will be meeting in the Hannah Cosman meeting room. On Monday, the 19th at 6 p.m., the Rec and Parks Board meeting will be in the Gibson-Aiken Center at 7 p.m. Also on Monday, the 19th, the DRB will be meeting in the Select Board meeting room. On Tuesday, the 20th, so is that part warned then at 5:30?
5:15.
5:15. I'm not getting any of this right. The Select Board will be meeting, will start their meeting to interview applicants for the Archer Building at 6 p.m. The West River Park Committee will be meeting in the Gibson-Aiken Center at 6:15 p.m. We will have our next regularly scheduled Select Board meeting. Also at 6:30 p.m., the Human Services Review Committee is meeting at 81 Laurel Street, which I assume is someone's house. And with that, I move to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Board.